think the first thing to do with pausing is to realize it matters, and to realize that how we spend our time is always a choice. So we can either choose to go along with the way things seem to be, or we can ask questions. I think the other thing is to start small. That when I talk about pausing, people often say, oh, I couldn't do that. And I think they're imagining you have to go to the mountains for a month. But you can pause for a couple of seconds, and that can change something and open up a space. So I would counsel people to start small, and then you can flip it the other way as well and say, there's an old saying about this: if you don't have the time to do it right, why do you think you have the time to do it over? So the rush and hurry is often creating the scarcity of time that we feel. And so if you slow down or you take a moment, you can do more carefully, more specific things that will save you time. So it's a challenge, and it does require you to be brave, but it first of all requires that you realize that it matters and that's important, and that you have some say in it, however much pressure is coming upon you. I think it can come with experience, but there are plenty of people with experience who don't have that measured sense of time, and perhaps rarely there are younger people who do. So I think it's more to do with a sensibility that probably grows as you get older and as things kind of look different to you. But it's not really just about speed or pace. It's much more about rhythm and variation, and I think that's about sensitivity. So I think people in the arts, people who play instruments, people who speak, who act, they have and can develop a much greater sense of that rhythm and the space within the time that's available to them than people who perhaps spend their time just looking at spreadsheets and on technology. I don't think leaders do understand that. As one an actor I spoke to, who I interviewed for the book, she said, time is your material. And so when you talk in any capacity, whether it's in a meeting or from a stage, the time and the timing of how you speak is as important as what you say. And you can say the same words with a different rhythm and they will mean something completely different. And so it is the very stuff of leadership. So there's a story I heard many, many years ago about a little boy who asks his father, who's a CEO, what he does for a living, and the father tries to explain and fails miserably. And they have one of those days at work where the kids can go into work. This was in the US. And at the end of the day, when the little boy has accompanied his father around the business, he says, "Oh, Daddy, you talk for a living. That's all you do." And so that is actually what leaders do much of the time, is speak. And so in that speech, how you use time and rhythm and phrasing is absolutely crucial. I think more of them could realize it. I think that in the arts, there is no escaping that fact. And I think in the business world, where people often will reach positions of leadership because they're technically accomplished, but don't have the human skills of engagement and connection and communication and empathy, you can find that it is sorely missing. It's super simple and completely crashingly obvious, which is make pause a thing. And the reason that this whole kind of inquiry began was because I realized that this word that we happily use, which we all understand, can mean anything from a few moments to a few hours, to days, to weeks, to months, or a whole sabbatical year or longer. And so by making pause a thing, what I'm inviting you to do is to think about where you need to introduce some space in your time, in your life and at work. And that may be once a week going away to a cabin like Bill Gates did, for a week, once every 2 years, going away to a cabin and thinking deeply about it. Or it may be pausing and counting to one, just one, before you enter a meeting room, so that you can enter that room in the way that you choose. And counting to one is enough. You don't need to get to 10. To just stop yourself on the threshold and think, how do I want to enter this room? So the reason it's make pause a thing is that you have to work out what it is for you. It's this very plastic concept. But the metaphor I use is that pause is like yeast. You might not need much of it, but without yeast you can't make bread. So our lives without pause become heavy, dull, flat, crammed, overwhelming.